Hey everyone, it's Amit. So if you're looking to rent a home, it's probably no surprise that things aren't quite what they used to be. Rental prices across the United States have effectively been going through the roof. Now I know there's a few pockets here and there where there's some level of stabilization, but for all intents and purposes, when it comes to these large metropolises where there's a significant amount of economic activity, the pace of change or the rate of change with a lot of these rental prices continues to accelerate. And that's what I want to talk about in this video, is what's driving these prices for a lot of these rental properties, and when can we potentially see some level of reprieve when it comes to the state of the rental market. But before I get too far into it, don't forget to gently tap that like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, and let's get into it. So while rental prices were definitely going down during the global health crisis back in 2020, they are back with an absolute vengeance. The national median rent rose to $1,302 in September, up 15% from a year ago, according to a report from Apartment List, a rental listing site. Okay, now this $1,302 is just a median number. Okay, if you look at certain cities such as New York City as well as San Francisco, this price is well over $3,500 at this point in time. So what's driving a lot of these prices? Well, there's quite a few factors that are out there, but the ones that I would like to focus on are really three of them. Okay, so one of those factors is that employers are basically requesting their employees to come back to the office. When you have these large metropolises out there which have a lot of economic activity, so basically they hire a lot of people, a lot of these employers are basically demanding this. When you have this fact pattern happening, you're going to have all of these employees coming back to these large metropolises, effectively renting a home, and that's basically going to increase the demand when it comes to a lot of these homes. The other factor that's also out there in terms of what's driving a lot of these rental prices up is the people that are living in rentals who are looking to buy a home but they just can't afford it. I've talked about it in other videos as well. Prices of homes have been going through the roof over the last 12 to 18 months here at this point in time, and they're effectively become very unaffordable. So you would always have that certain amount of population out there that lives in rental properties who look to migrate over to becoming homeowners, but that paradigm is not fulfilling itself at this point in time. It's just too darn expensive. And the third reason why, and it has to do with the housing sector in general, has to do with the limited supply that's out there. You have limited supply when it comes to new home construction, and that basically has a trickle-down effect towards all sectors of the housing economy in itself. So with that said, there are some green shoots out there, okay? And what I mean by green shoots is some potential levels of optimism as well, okay, in terms of when this thing might effectively end. So there is some data that would basically reflect that the pace of increase when it comes to a lot of these rentals has narrowed a bit, okay? And the second thing that you can be perhaps fairly optimistic about is the notion that multi-property construction permits have grown by 15%. So when you have that, construction permits going up, at some point in time there will be all these places that people can basically live in. There will be incremental supply which will offset some of that incremental demand and will hopefully level out a lot of these prices. But the problem around this whole thing is that these are construction permits, okay? So it's going to take a while for these buildings to basically come up. The other thing to look forward to, and this one's a bit of a double-edged sword, okay, but it has to do with the whole eviction moratorium. The eviction moratorium is basically expired in several parts of the country at this point in time. While there may be an uptick when it comes to evictions at its core, the thing to look forward to if you're in the market for a rental property is that there would be some level of increased capacity when it comes to more rental units that are basically coming up on the market. Now, with all of these said, right, there's some level of positives, there's some level of negatives as well. Like the biggest negative when it comes to the whole eviction moratorium outside of people actually getting evicted is the whole notion that a lot of landlords are now going to perhaps be increasing the prices of a lot of these rentals as well, and that has to do with the cost that they potentially incurred with the whole eviction process, all that missed back rent that they had to effectively deal with, and to potentially take off some of the risk that they basically have as well. Now, I've talked about this whole fact pattern in a different video, which I'll leave a link to up above as well as in the description below, so definitely go ahead and check that out. Other problems when it comes to this sector is also the notion that mortgage rates are increasing, okay? So the 10-year treasuries are going up, mortgage rates are slowly but surely increasing as well, and that's what makes it less desirable to effectively buy a home, okay? And then of course there's the notion that I already talked about, which is the whole return to work, right? Or return to the office for all intents and purposes, and that in itself is just going to have a tailwind when it comes to a lot of these rental prices as well. So when, in my opinion, can we see some level of stabilization when it comes to all of this? So it all has to do with the root cause of this entire impact to the housing sector, and that has to do with supply. And when are we looking at that perhaps happening? Well, it's going to take time, okay? And it's probably going to be the middle part of 2022 to perhaps even the latter part of 2022 when this whole thing sort of like resolves itself. But anyway, these are just my opinions. What are your thoughts as it relates to this? Do you think the rental housing prices will come down a lot earlier than what we're potentially thinking about on this channel? Include all of that in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the contents of this video. I do a lot of these types of videos when it comes to the impact of the economy as it relates to the housing sector as well as the vehicle sector. So if that is definitely of interest to you, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, and I will see you in the next one.